Welcome back. Now, the end of the year is just a few weeks away, can you believe it? And fraud awareness is being promoted. In the wake of International Fraud Awareness Week, which ends today, business leaders and employees are encouraged to take steps to minimize the impact of fraud through education. For more on this, procurement thought leader Lerato Sebata joins me live in studio. Good evening to you. Thank you so much for joining us.
Good evening, Abigail. Thank you so much for having me.
My absolute pleasure. So a very important topic as we are at the tail end of Fraud Awareness Week today. What is the main message from the Association of Certified Fraud Examiners about why both organizations and regular people like you and I need to be aware and focused?
I think the main message that is communicated is that fraud is a national problem, both a regular person like me and you, including organizations. So a lot of awareness is required for us to be able to curb fraud. And we see it play out a lot in communities, in business, and myself being in procurement, I've evidently seen a couple of incidents. So I think that's the main message of creating a culture of vigilance so that you'll be able to mitigate those type of issues.
Let's expand on these specific instances that you've come across throughout your time in business and ultimately why it's important for fraud awareness to be prioritized. Is it a big issue? Are we seeing it evolve and grow, or do we sort of have a handle on it?
You know what, I think we have a handle to a certain degree. There's a lot of room for growth, especially in communicating the latest trends that seem to be emerging in the space.
Sure.
And what we see quite often in procurement is a rise of misrepresentation of documents, suppliers coming through with false identification, and people being scammed almost on a daily basis, small business suffering, thinking that they're buying into spaces and just to figure out that it was just, false. So there's still room for growth in this area. And I think what the association is doing is to kind of drive that message for, international awareness. And we are the foot soldiers to actually communicate that to the communities at large.
So let's talk about these patterns that you've been noticing, the trends that you've been noticing, specifically when it comes to procurement and supply chain. What are the common patterns that you are noticing creep up again and again?
Sure. The common patterns that happen a lot more often is with the BEE fronting.
Interesting.
That happens quite a lot. I mean, the BEE Commission records over 1,200 cases that are reported annually with regards to fronting, and more than 80% of those are actually true. And if you're obviously found with such allegations or issues, then you could be imprisoned or paying fines. And procurement, because we are mandated to onboard service providers, conduct due diligence, these are some of the things that we get to see quite early on. And the other growing, I would say, incident is issue of payments and invoices. Suppliers tend to overcharge, and if you don't monitor the spend in an organization, you might find yourself realizing that you've paid more than you should have, or just small increments or round of figures, stuff that is not easy to figure. But if you're not aware, you wouldn't necessarily take note. And those are the things that we see.
It would slip through the cracks.
Yes.
I want to expand on the issue of BEE fronting and what exactly that means, what exactly that entails.
Okay. So BEE fronting is suppliers that would come together, sometimes through partnership and through tendering, and one would not have the management, I would say, rights to be running that company. And the other organization actually might just be doing the entire procurement process, and you basically just fronting, in essence, that you have ownership, you have share certificates in that organization, for example, and you don't have any of those documentation. And that is part of, fronting. And it comes in different ways as well. Sometimes you find, BE, I would say, records blacks as a black South African with ID, citizen. And you find non-citizen, I would say, South Africans that own companies and they go and complete B certificates with fraudulent IDs, for example. And that's also part of fronting because you may not be naturalized as South African,
Sure.
So there's many incidents in that space that speak to that,
Over the last couple of years, there's been such a huge development in the technical space. Have we seen this development when it comes to fraud awareness as well? How can we use the improvements that we've seen technologically wise to ensure that we better attack this issue?
You know, technology, I suppose, is controlled by human beings, right? In as much as there are systems and solutions that can help you enable a fraud awareness culture, it can only do to a certain extent. So I think individuals play a lot more role in early detection and influencing what must technology do for you and the systems that are available out there. And also it depends what type of industry. So not every IT solution will work for any type of industry. For example, with banking, you might have better solutions that will control credit card fraud. But you may not have the same example for construction type of industry where you have a lot of subcontractors that appoint other subcontractors. At the time that you decide that this is, the solution that we use to appoint service providers and qualify them, but now you don't know who comes on board at the time when the project is actually happening. So it depends on industries as well. There is a lot of room for growth in the IT space to implement those solutions. So, yeah.
Lerato, someone sitting at home thinking, you know what, I don't own a business. I work at home for myself, so maybe I'm not so prone to falling for these sort of traps and I'm not as exposed. What do you say to people who have that sort of perception?
Sure. I think because it is a national problem, every single day you find people crying, being defrauded in many different forms and ways. I've had a friend who was defrauded because a company just came to them and said, hey, please, let's partner. I have this business, I have trucks. Can you come in? I have this diesel that just needs to work out, etc. And you're thinking you're going to invest because you want to have extra hustle, right? And
a great opportunity has fallen onto your lap. Yeah?
And then you're thinking, you're just taking it like that. Little do you know, this person, though they don't even own those trucks. And you put in your money and then it's gone. So it can come in any way and any form. So you just need to be aware and learn what are the new trends that these fraudsters actually are doing out there.
So if I find myself in a situation where I have been defrauded and I've lost huge sums of money, is that the end of it? What sort of steps can I take to maybe mitigate the situation and recoup my money? Is this even possible? Where do I go if I found myself in a difficult situation and I've lost money due to fraud?
I think as an individual, first thing you just need to go obviously open a case and try and get that through the process, the legal process. As an organization, then you have a different process flow that you will follow, which also entails investigating, checking what happened, having professionals to actually come and audit, and then the risk team coming together to find what are the mitigation plans, the loopholes that they found, and creating those awareness. And then more than anything else, implementing those controls, because the issue is the controls. When someone can realize I can hack your own house in the system and they have access to your data, then you need to find out how do I close this door and this loophole. And that will be the mitigation, ways.
And what sort of tips are there for organizations specifically to close that door and to mitigate against the risk? Are there any proactive steps that an organization can take to secure themselves?
Yeah, of course. There needs to be a lot of working together within the organization, the fraud or risk, compliance departments, and finding a solution that will work for the organization. And of course, checking what are these risks. Having a risk register, documenting what are these mitigation plans we can have and the controls we can implement, whether it's a system or a process, or people, or changing a couple of things. That's some things that organizations can look at in implementing those type of changes and controls to not be, I would say, exposed.
Sure.
Yeah.
A very interesting conversation, Lerato. Thank you very much for your time. Thank you for sharing your insights.
Thank you so much,
It's been lovely
Abigail.
chatting to you. My pleasure. That was procurement thought leader Lerato Sebata talking to us about Fraud Awareness Week as it wraps up tonight, Sunday night. A very important conversation and some tips there from Lerato. But moving on, a police officer